Well, I was afraid you might ask me about that. It was one of those things I felt compelled to do, but which really, when I think back at it, was just it was a complete waste of effort, really. It had no effect on the world at all. I don't think I made a single convert to my views. But it it strengthened my friendship with a few, Peter Markey and Francis Hewlett, and people who collaborated with me. And it led to a few funny incidents and good jokes. And I also got to know a little bit. I got to know Dora Russell, Bertrand's ex-wife, and she was a fierce little old lady, and passionate orator. She'd jump up on the soapbox. You couldn't keep her off it, and haranguing people. And anyway, we did it because the world seemed such a hideously ugly. The world of mankind seemed so ugly and stupid. So much happening that threatened the very existence of life on the planet. And you couldn't just carry on with life and not do anything at all. And I can remember racking my brains thinking, well, I don't want to write books, and even if I did, people wouldn't read them. What can I do to convey the urgency I felt? And so Francis and I thought, well, we ought to do soapbox oratory, because I'd always been a fan of the Reverend Dr. Donald Soper up at Hyde Park Corner, and various other old geezers. There was a wonderful old secular sort of atheist who I admired enormously. So we constructed this soapbox and covered it with. Do you want to know all this, Andrew?
Absolutely, nothing wrong yet. No, perfect.
Have you started filming it?
Yeah.
Oh, Christ. We constructed this soapbox. I think Francis did the sawing and hammering and screwing up together, and then we covered it in slogans. I remember it was slogans out of Tolstoy, and I remember a quote from Danilo Dolci, the great Sicilian pacifist, and Gandhi and other good minds. And so off we went with a little gaggle of sometimes of supporters. Usually they were so embarrassed that they skulked off almost immediately. But sometimes it worked really well, and we got quite a crowd of people. And other times you did that awful thing of shouting to empty space, and it's very difficult to talk to no one. A bit like this. Talking to this fucking thing. Talking to nobody.
Did you all speak at once? Did you?
No, I did the speaking, because I don't know why. The others pushed me up and made me do the speaking. And later on, when I met Dora, she came and did speaking as well. But I tended to do most of the yabbering. And Francis and the others agitated on the fringes of the meeting. I don't know what they did. Urge people to join Committee of 100 or something.
But didn't you get accused of treason?
I did get accused. What happened, I suppose I could still be locked up for this. What happened, back on the way back from one of the big Committee of 100 meetings, a chap made it known to me that he had a whole lot of pamphlets or documents he'd acquired from one of these underground seats of government, which was all left open. They'd found it and walked into it, and there were all these highly secret documents showing this ring of these regional seats of government through the country, and with instructions for the occupants on how to control the rest, the hoi polloi up above, which was not nice reading at all. I mean, we were subject to abrupt a very cursory military control up above. We were ruled by military courts and so on, and could be put against a wall and popped off if we weren't doing the right thing. Anyway, I thought this was so monstrous that these things had been set up without any knowledge from the public at all. We weren't told, the people of the country, and so I began spouting from these documents. This chap unloaded a whole lot of documents on me, which I thought, well, I'll make them known to the public. So I, like the sort of naive fool I was, I started to quote from them. But it was highly flattering to discover subsequently that CID officers used to listen to my orations. I don't think I converted any. That would be good, wouldn't it?
But what happened at Padstow? Padstow.
Oh, Padstow, we set up our soapbox, and I had a good crowd of people. And but unfortunately there were, or perhaps fortunately, there were a lot of sailors on leave, skulking about, and they took exception to, because I said I thought it was ignominious that anyone should submit to military discipline. I said it wasn't courageous; it was just pathetic, and that they ought to grow up and be, true individuals, true to themselves, not lend their lives to someone else. I always thought that was the most supine thing you could do, to give your life to some other bastard to use you as a commodity. As we see now in Afghanistan, these poor little saps of 18 and 19 sent out there, and they don't know what it's about, and they're heaped with lies. They're told a whole lot of lies about other people. Anyway, I expounded those views, and suddenly a whole gaggle of these chaps, who turned out to be sailors on leave, decided they'd had enough of that. So they they caught hold of me and were about to hurl me into the harbour. And worst of all, they wanted to hurl my lovely soapbox into the harbour. And at that moment, from the back of the crowd emerged numerous plainclothes policemen who saved me, dragged them off and saved me. And I felt it was rather bad to be saved by them. I felt I should have been thrown in, really. Upon which I'd have drowned and been a martyr to the cause.
You might have floated in your soapbox.
Yeah, I could have floated. I could have paddled off out of danger.
Didn't they? When you told me first, you said that they lifted you. You were like Lanyon at an angle.
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
With your soapbox still attached.
No, my soapbox came adrift, and a couple of others picked up the soapbox and were trying to hurl it in. It was a wonderful scene. But then all of a sudden, all these plainclothes, all these officers came, displaying their badges and shouting for them to unhand to that man.
And didn't you receive visits from the head of Cornwall?
Yes, I did. I subsequently, but this was after the other episode with the regional seats of government. I didn't know what to do with these documents. They were all given to me by this chap. I didn't know what they were, and I didn't know anything about him either. So I made off with them, and quoted from them because I felt they should be in the public domain. And then within a day I had visit from this man with the wonderful name of the Chief Superintendent Proven Sharp, who was not at all sharp. He was rather I thought rather thick and slow-witted. Anyway, he thought he was the terrific interrogator, and he came to my house. And he softened me up, first of all, by insulting everything in the house, saying how bad the furniture was and what rubbish my ornaments were, with which I concurred. I mean, it was all a load of absolute worthless crap. And so having softened me up with insults, he then gave me the hard interrogation, reduced me to helpless laughter. I couldn't. And then the sergeant who was with him had obviously been versed and instructed to be Mr. Nice Guy. So if the tough guy didn't get the information from me, because they wanted to know where I got the documents and who gave them to me. I didn't even know who'd given them to me, but I knew where they were and I wasn't going to tell them. And so they gave me this. He would give me the rough sort of interrogation, Proven Sharp. And then the sergeant would say, hang on a minute there, Chief, I'd like to have a word with him there, boy. He said, now don't you listen to him, don't you worry about him, I'm your friend, I'm on your side, boy, he said. You can trust me there, boy. He said, don't worry about what he says. You just tell it all to me, like, and I'll see 'tis all right. Like, like Ellie will. And so this sort of, so then that didn't work. So Proven Sharp would then take over again with more fierce interrogation, staring hard at me and telling me how many years I could spend in Sing Sing if I didn't cough up the details. It was all just hilariously funny, and I couldn't treat it seriously at all. And then in the end, I concealed all the documents, and I don't know where they are now. They all disappeared in the mists of time. And that's the end of that story.
Did you ever write down any of your speeches? Were they off the cuff?
They were off the cuff, yeah. I always found I could do it better off the cuff. I'd learned the hard way when I was instructed at Farmer's School of Art to do the art history. And I didn't know anything about art history, so I had to swat it up, but I wasn't time to write it all out, so I just did it off the cuff. On one occasion, one evening, I was talking about it only yesterday to someone. On one occasion, I didn't know what on earth I was going to say. I hadn't prepared anything. So I made up a Quattrocento artist and gave him a name like Mazzoccolino or something and talked about his frescoes in the church of something or other. And but to my alarm, the poor dedicated students were there writing it all down. And subsequently, this claptrap, which I'd invented, was submitted as proof of evidence of study to various eminences who came down to inspect the art school, but none of them picked up on it.
So you knew Lionel as well?
Oh, dear Lionel! Yeah, I knew Lionel. He was in charge of the liberal studies and art history, and yeah, he was a very good friend, Lionel.
So you and Francis and Lionel were a triumvirate.
We were an irresponsible triumvirate. Yeah. Although Francis was very dedicated, and so was Lionel in his way. I wasn't. I was feckless and silly. But Francis was a very impressive man. He had huge control. He could deal with bureaucracy and organising things. He'd run a children's home when he was a conchi in Surrey. I visited it once. He brought me in as a forestry expert. I was in the guise of a forestry expert then, and I had to chop a tree down, which fell in completely the opposite direction to it was intended, and had to be sawn into sections to get rid of it. But Francis was very, very skillful, intelligent man, and not only was he a wonderful artist, but a terrific friend, and funniest, cleverest man I ever met. And he had a terrific gift for organising things. And I was just a part-timer. I was a sort of new boy who did what I was told more or less, badly. And Lionel came in when I was there to do art history. We spent most of our time laughing, I seem to remember. I've still got in my house Lionel's things, his ceramics, which are so beautiful. And Francis's drawings. I'm looking at them now.
Mm. And what do you think, Lionel? What's best about Lionel's? Is it the etchings or the ceramics? Or it's a mixture, isn't it?
I think his drawing was always a little bit lacking in bite. The ceramics are a joy. They're so funny.
Yes.
Yeah. I think probably I like the ceramics the most.